Last Pint Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content, but since this is one of our special edition short episodes, we don't have time to record one of our comedic adult content warning masterpieces. I mean, we could have, in about the same amount of time it took to tell you we wouldn't, but we didn't. So there. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Ray Barboni from Miami.
Tough shit, bro. This ain't Miami. You want something? You gotta talk to me.
No. Fuck you, fuckball.
My name is Harris K. Telemacher. I live in Los Angeles and I've had 7 heart attacks. All imagined.
Yeah, Jake, it's Chinatown.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello and welcome to the New Way podcast with Ben, Matt, and Nick. The New Way, of course, is where we break down pop culture so you don't have to. I'm in the studio with Ben Wilson. We're on the satellite waves with Nick Santacroce, who's coming in.
But you wouldn't know it.
Crystal,
right there
crystal
in the room.
Clear.
Oh,
Crystal clear.
What a delicious connection, Matthew.
We have a great and special episode for you. The first in kind of a new set of series that we're going to be running on the New Way in addition to kind of our longer form episodes. We'll be posting these shorter kind of streamlined episodes that are going to cover certain themes. So, for example, we're going to have one called On Location In, and each one of those will be on location in a different city, state, country, region, and we'll kind of discuss that impact of that location on the film at hand. There's going to be our 6 Degrees of series where we do a deep dive into a specific character, actor, or actress, or just an actor, actress that we like. The whole episode will be about them. We've got Directed By, which is going to be an offshoot of what we did last year, where we did a whole episode on Richard Linklater. We're going to pick some other filmmakers that we really like and focus only on their films. And there's a bunch of other ones we have ideas to do. Created By, where we talk about showrunners and the different properties they've worked on. Written By, edited by, cinematography, shot by. All kinds of different ones. So look for those.
These are the special 3-hour episodes, right?
These are going to be in 7 parts, 45 minutes each, and you have to listen to every one because we will reference. No, literally, these are great ones to tune into when you just want to get through a quick commute, a quick short commute.
You would get these episodes while you were trick or treating, and they would be called fun size.
This is exactly correct. These are easily digestible little Snickers fun size candies.
I set them up, you knock them down.
You do. That's right. So today our first one is going to be an on location. Ben, you picked the location, so tell us, where are we traveling and why?
And not to be confused,
Almost tax-free shopping.
when we say we're on location in a area, that does not mean we're broadcasting from that location.
Ben, shut up. Why would you ruin the idea that we have a budget that flies us to all of these locations to do these?
They know that I believe, if you've listened to the podcast, that we have a road system that travels.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Don't ruin the surprise.
Okay, so we are not in Bandera.
We're on location on the moon. That's right, bitches. This is on location on the moon.
So only movies that take place on the moon.
We're in Delaware.
Today I thought we would start out this on location series by doing the great state of Texas.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
Woo! There we go. Okay. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way.
Yes. So, obviously, Texas is a big state. It's a state that has had a lot of history in film. You go back to kind of the Western, a lot of the most famous Westerns, of course, take place in especially central to Western Texas. Some of I would say, arguably the most famous Westerns in American cinematic history. And then I think it also has kind of a very interesting modern history. And though we've spoken about Richard Linklater in the past, like the Linklater and then the independent film scene that kind of grew out of what Linklater was doing in the Austin, Texas scene, Robert Rodriguez, another Austin filmmaker, and quite a few others that have actually come out of that kind of scene. So yeah, so I figured we would start and we could talk about some of the stuff that really made Texas cinematically Texas.
Sure, Ben. That's all the time we have for tonight on the New Way. So I hope you enjoyed this short one. Yeah,
streamlined.
Oh no, my turn. My turn. Did you know Texas is Spanish for bigger? That's right. Even the name is bigger in Texas.
Oh no.
It's not true though.
That's not true.
I made that up. But you like my confidence.
They
didn't you?
did. I do like that. So when they say, those of you that have not been to Texas, and they say it's a whole other country, it is.
It is.
Of all the places I've traveled in the U.S., I very much feel Texas is its own little kind of not sort of isolated country. It's huge, so it's got all kinds of different landscapes in it that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see. There's a beach coastal area, there are desert areas, there's everything in between. It's kind of crazy.
The difference between Houston and Dallas and Austin is huge.
And San Antonio and El Paso. I mean, the whole state, every town has its own identity, and that's something we can actually kind of get into, because a lot of these, there are lots of movies, for example, and I'll just start with something that's kind of random. When I was looking through movies that were filmed and or take place in Texas, I had no fucking idea that Office Space takes place in Texas.
Oh yeah.
No idea.
Because so it's funny, these guys that came out of Austin and that area love to fucking tell their shit in Austin. And what's funny is I think there's this feeling with Linklater and Judge and Rodriguez and some of these other ones that they're telling these stories that are very unique to their own locale, but they're really not. And that's what's kind of funny is you look at the majority of those guys' film work. Most of their movies could be set just about anywhere. The location is not, you don't watch Dazed and Confused, and it, other than the football discussions in it, it doesn't feel like it's uniquely Texas.
However, Bernie and the Newton Boys are distinctly Texas stories.
Yeah,
so there's a give and take. Some of them are obviously, like School of Rock could take place anywhere.
Yeah. Well, and what's cool though, and what's funny. So I also because there's such this pride, this Texas pride that exists out there, and you know that there's a Texas pride, and that a large number of the movies that take place in Texas have Texas in the fucking title. Like I was amazed going through and be like, oh yeah, you can't name a lot of movies that have Florida or California, necessarily in New York, maybe.
Florida Project.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you got and Sunshine State. There you go, Ben. You got the two.
Oscar winner Moonlight, Best Picture.
Doesn't have Florida in the title.
In the title?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, I was saying you get
in the title.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Happy Texas,
Paris, Texas.
Happy Texas,
the Alamo.
Oh, come on!
Like, there are a lot of ones and there's a lot of real life stories that tend to have gotten made into films that happen to take place in, like Bernie, when you mentioned, which was oddly enough the first time I liked Friday Night Lights. Anything to do with football. Necessary Roughness, a great based on a true story movie.
Listen, every single time I faked sick in middle school, that movie was playing on TBS.
Necessary Roughness.
Oh, it's amazing.
That's Kathy Ireland from Alien.
Oh my God.
And Scott Bakula from everything.
From the greatest TV show ever made, Quantum Leap. That theme song is so good. So, Texas is very proud to have it, and there are people that are very proud to set their movies in Texas, whether or not they need to be set in Texas or not, which I think is kind of very interesting to see that there is that pride in that state.
The Duplass brothers are from Texas?
I did not, because they don't feel the need to set all of their things
Jay
in Texas.
went to film school at UT Austin.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I was actually reading up on, oddly enough, on Necessary Roughness, that the school in that is now a real, like, there is now a University of South Texas. I think that's what the UST, they became a school in 2003.
Are they the Armadillos?
They are not the Fighting Armadillos. They're the Badgers. And I'm like, that's such a missed opportunity.
We don't need no stinking Badgers.
They could they could have Sinbad and Scott Bakula show up at every game if they just call themselves the Fighting Armadillos.
Oh my God.
Those dumb bastards.
And I mean, if they wanted to go with Cougars,
no, those dumb Badgers.
If they wanted to go with something actually intimidating, that's an argument to go against Armadillos. But they went with Badgers. That is such a lateral move.
Oh yeah. You're not winning. You're definitely not winning with the Badgers.
Badgers? We don't need those stinking Badgers.
Well, in Wisconsin, That's the Badgers team. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface was based on Ed Gein, who actually did kill in Wisconsin.
Okay, so now we're just
Like
doing.
that?
Now we're doing 6 degrees of
The wheels
Of
turning.
Texas. Well, I was-
Just, heaven forbid we should learn something when we listen to the New Way.
well, so let's.
I almost once hooked up with a girl who lived in Texas. No.
Oh my lord. That's great.
God, Ben.
We're doing 6 degrees. I'm just.
Yeah. So my question is, with all of the let's kind of break down into some of these different genres. So we talked about westerns, but I think football in Texas is a good thing to kind of start off on.
Sure.
It is taken so seriously in that state, and the movies do a good job, I think, of doing justice to just how serious they take their sports out there. Right?
I think so. Now, people don't remember that the movie Varsity Blues came out before Friday Night Lights. Now, it was actually, for those that don't know, Friday Night Lights is actually based on a 1988 book that won the Pulitzer, I believe, or not the Pulitzer, but maybe an American. It won many awards. Anyways, it's
What was it called?
it was called Friday Night Lights.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
And so, ironically though, the cousin of Peter Berg, who directed the movie of Friday Night Lights, was the one who wrote the book. That was a family affair, and was one of Peter Berg's earliest movies. Actually, it was like his third directorial movie. Anyways,
One of the only watchable ones.
I think that you have like this. You can go back to Dallas
It's just the
North
tip
North
of-
Dallas 40.
North Dallas 40, which I think is one of the first sort of Texas, football movies. And I can't remember if the original, what the Adam Sandler did the remake, the one where
He did The Longest
The
Yard.
Longest Yard.
Yard.
Did that take place in Texas?
I don't know. Let's look that
It
up
did.
while you continue talking.
did.
Oh, okay.
It did. It was one of the first movies I worked on the electronic press kits when I moved to LA, and it was
No,
right.
I was talking
around
about the
time-
original. I was talking about the original, not the remake.
You mentioned Adam Sandler specifically.
I
didn't
said Adam Sandler was in the remake. The original
All right,
was Burt
then-
Reynolds.
Then scrap my anecdote. Continue.
But so it's good to know that the remake took place in Texas, because that probably means the original took place in Texas. I would
I can
assume.
confirm the Adam Sandler version took place in Texas.
I think actually it takes place in Florida.
Really?
At Citrus State Prison. No, I'm sorry, that's in Georgia. Georgia's the citrus state? I guess that makes sense.
Georgia's the peach state.
Well, Citrus State Prison
I can eat a
is
peach for
apparently
Alice.
in Georgia. So Georgia is standing in for
Okay, so the remake took place in so basically what they said is like they saw that movie, the original with Burt Reynolds, and they said The Longest Yard needs to take place in Texas. Which tells you a lot about kind of Texas, the some of the football stereotypes and stuff like that along those lines. But besides North Dallas 40 and Necessary Roughness and all these other movies, I feel like the first time it was actually taken seriously, like people could say about Varsity Blues, whatever they want to say about Varsity Blues. I love that movie. It's a guilty pleasure, 100%. But
I don't want your life.
I don't want your life. But I actually like Friday Night Lights. Like Friday Night Lights, I think is actually a great movie. Do you not agree?
I do.
Yeah. And
I
Are
don't
you
remember.
saying
I
Varsity
love
Blues?
the
I'm
series.
sorry, you switched over to Friday Night Lights.
I was saying I love Varsity Blues, but I don't think it's a great movie.
No. It
It's
is a popcorn flick. Friday Night Lights is legit. It's a legit movie.
Friday Night Lights actually has great
What are we
performances.
talking about? Are we talking about the
Football.
Longest Yard with Adam Sandler or Longest Yard? Where are we again?
Okay, so we've clearly proven ourselves not capable of doing sports in. No, I'm kidding. I agree. I think
joking. I'm joking.
Of-
The thing that I think is interesting as far as like for me, when I saw a football movie in Texas, a lot of times they focus on, with Friday Night Lights, obviously the high school football, which is so huge.
Right.
Mostly those movies are going to be college or they're going to be pro. But that's shown a very special light when you're talking about Texas as the setting for a film. Not just a football town, not just a football state, It is where on Friday nights, the local high school is as big of a draw as if the Dallas Cowboys were in that podunk town.
Oh, yeah,
it is huge, and it paints a real picture of the town and what it would be like to live there if you buy into those depictions.
There are bigger crowds for some high school championship
Than
games than there are
college
for, I mean, or even like the Dolphins. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, it's fucking insane. But yeah,
Well, they need to build a Lisa Frank dolphin sculpture that erupts when they score a touchdown.
No, I mean, there are certain towns in Texas that look the same, like the downtown strip or main strip areas where things close down during game time. I mean, it's the same as like going to Green Bay, where it's like on Sunday at that time, there's shit going on except for the game. And same in Texas, on Friday at game time, when there's a home game, you're there or you're at home and you're glued to your TV and you're watching it. Because that's the thing is all of those high school games in Texas are televised now. Like you can watch any of those games on TV. It's insane. I mean, it's just like watching a college game or watching a pro game.
And
so,
you know
yeah.
what's also
It's a great
cool
point.
is
It's a great point.
it paints a vivid picture of what it would be like to grow up there.
Sure.
Right? In one of those small towns, right? And it makes it that much better of a backdrop for a football movie. But then again, after decades of seeing that side, then you got Linklater, then you got Dazed and Confused. Then you have other movies showing sort of the kids that grew up with that unique kind of pressure-filled small-town sports world and kind of rebelled and became their own thing.
Which ironically is kind of what Varsity Blues is about.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why it's good.
No, and I think that's a
The other reason is obviously the beak.
the what?
The Vanderbeek.
Oh, the beak.
Well,
I thought you were
I thought you were
saying.
gonna say the boobs.
Yeah, say Allie Larder in the whipped cream bikini. That's Varsity Blues, right?
What about the teacher? She's a 10. She's a 10. the teacher stripper.
Oh yeah, this is right. This is true.
You don't call him the beak in casual conversation?
I didn't I thought you were going boobs as well, so I got ahead of myself, and then it sounded strange. To
I
me.
call him James. The last time I called him the beak, he was just kind of like got mad.
He thought it was lame.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, grow up, and then he ugly cried for 5 seconds and made another meme. Yeah, so I think that is kind of one of the things that is interesting with these Texas films is really there is this grandiose, there's this pride in whatever it is they're telling in the story, even if it's not completely necessary for it. But I did want to kind of talk about some of the true-ish stories that were based out of things in Texas. I say true-ish because there are, I don't know if we want to call Texas Chainsaw Massacre necessarily a true story, but it is based on true events.
Well, since you're saying it, can I just bring up one movie
Absolutely.
called True Stories? Directed by David Byrne.
Yes.
Which is
he's in the
Sack
Lunch Bunch. Oh, I've heard of that guy.
It was so good. No, True Stories is actually one of a really, really interesting film, and you guys might not have heard of it. All listeners might not have heard of it. It's a very, very strange sort of musical comedy that is very kind of counterculture, directed by and pseudo starring David Byrne as a narrator.
David Byrne is the lead singer
of Talking Heads,
Heads,
who is not known to be in a lot of movies or really direct movies, but actually stars John Goodman, in actually a really fantastic role where he's kind of like, this guy trying to find love in this town that's celebrating their sesquicentennial, which is a 150-year anniversary. And so there's this giant pageant and like a talent show and this huge thing, like a hubbub going on. And it's all about the lead up to this huge thing that the town is just so involved in, with John Goodman playing our protagonist, just randomly narrated by David Byrne. It's such a good movie.
Who's
it's
like
so good.
In frame in a cowboy hat.
Yes,
Talking.
he's in frame.
Just
walking around.
Matt, do you think that the makers of the Christmas Story musical on Fox saw True Stories and said, that's it. We'll make Ralphie the narrator. They called up Matthew Broderick. We have this great idea. We watched this awesome movie the Talking Heads guy made.
It's amazing. They out-creeped David Byrne, like, skulking around somehow, which is amazing. First of all, so I had to look. I did not know this movie until Ben just started talking about it, and then I looked at it and I go, "Oh, saw this when I was younger." But
so
I had no
weird.
idea I didn't know who any of this was.
For sure, we talked about this before, Matt.
I don't know.
Never?
I don't
wow.
think so.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Do you know who was one of the writers on that movie?
Who?
Stephen Tobolowsky. Ned Ryerson from Groundhog Day and Memento, and a character actor that's in 1,000 fucking things.
Yes, Ned Ryerson
wrote True Stories.
He was in Silicon Valley. Yeah, Silicon Valley.
Yes. It's craziest.
Anyways, it's an insanely. It's one of those things that you can watch now and just be like, "This is so delightfully." I mean, it's very kind of Coen-y in a way. It's like if you mix a Coen Brothers film and a Farrelly Brothers film. It's like got this really broad
with just a pinch of Harmony Korine.
Maybe just a pinch of Harmony Korine. Yeah.
I was hoping for a third sibling duo
because it's got some ridiculously offbeat comedy, some ridiculously broad and kind of slapstick comedy, and then it's also just this weird sort of social commentary about people in Texas. It's very interesting.
I will have to check this out.
Great movie. Anyways, interesting thing. Totally an outlier from everything else that we're gonna. And you kept saying True Stories. I was just like, well, since you're saying True Stories, I have to bring it up because that's the name of the fucking movie.
I think that was John Goodman's first cinematic role.
It's 86 because he was in Porky's and he was in the.
It may have been his first pseudo dramatic role because he actually
All American.
He plays a straight man in it, kind of like he's the straight guy.
he spoke about it in one of those GQ interviews. It's a great series, and sneakily enough, the GQ YouTube page, their channel is really good, but they interview actors. They talk about every single one of their roles.
I've watched almost every single one of them. I haven't watched Goodman's, but I've watched Defoe. I've watched a ton of them.
Are you enjoying that beer over there?
What?
Because you just did like a commercial. You sipped it and like a cartoon character went.
Sorry,
you literally smacked your lips. I've very rarely seen.
Hey, leave that to the Honey Smacks frog.
Sorry,
it was like a Muppet when they eat and then just go. So you think they ate something? Anyway, moving on. So for the True Stories, there are things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's Dallas Buyers Club.
Bernie.
It's based on, like I said before. The callback to my brilliant reference about Ed Gein, which I already regret. That was in Wisconsin, right? But Tobe Hooper was working as a camera operator in Austin. And one of the big reasons he wrote that movie, with the amount of violence and gore that the effectiveness depends on, it was the San Antonio News that he said would regularly show gray matter in a crime scene on television. They delighted in this, and it hit him.
It was like a Nightcrawler situation, huh? If it bleeds, it leads.
Exactly it, and he was disgusted by it. And he thought that the real evil is man, except man just kind of hides a mask, and under the guise of news, and that's why he literally has the Leatherface creature wearing a man mask. That's what it's actually a statement on, which is direct is innately Texas at the time, I guess. So
well, it's also, I mean, in Texas makes for a great setting for that because you do have these wide open vistas and these kind of remote areas that you can kind of shoot in where you've got desert and then a tree, and then that is the area that exists. It looks very remote and dangerous and scary to be stuck out in kind of this boonies area because there's a ton of that. It's because it's such a fucking big state. Dallas Buyers Club is not, I don't know that there's, other than, I mean, there's the rodeo aspect. There are a lot of things that are very Texas. I mean, obviously it takes place I think around Texas.
One thing that a lot of movies kind of lean on a lot is the proximity to Mexico. I mean, just knowing you share that much border with Mexico. And so you have a lot of movies like Dallas Buyers Club, or movies like No Country for Old Men, or
Dusk Till Dawn,
From Dusk Till Dawn.
They literally crossed the border in that.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and there was
with one of the.
And also, can I just say, Dusk Till Dawn is not the best movie ever made.
It's a bad movie, kind of.
It does feature the drummer of Oingo Boingo in Vampire Teeth as the house band at the Vampire Bar, and it does have honestly, it's still in my top 3 cold opens of a film ever. Where Quentin Tarantino
that
and
open
George
is badass.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
they are, and the guy, the counter guy's a character actor that I love. It's been in a million things. I can't remember his name, but basically they're in the middle of robbing this store when a cop walks in, so they hide. And the whole time they're threatening the cashier from behind the counters of Doritos, and it's so awesome, and it's quickly downhill from there. But an interesting glimpse into Quentin Tarantino as an actor, though.
Are we gonna call it an actor? I mean, he's
like third on the call sheet.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, he's a man that reads the lines quickly and loudly. I don't know.
I think he's actually the only acting chops we've seen from Quentin Tarantino is in this movie.
You might be right about that.
When was the last time you saw it? I thought he was pretty good.
Oh, and the actor you're thinking of, by the way, is John Hawkes. That's yes.
I owe John better than that. He's
John Hawkes. By the way, I'm going to nominate right now for one of our 6 degrees of, because goddamn is he fucking amazing.
Great.
So
you and me and everyone we know.
I do like Nick, you brought up a good thing, or Ben brought up a good thing, both of you, of this idea of the proximity to Mexico and that crossing. And there was a really phenomenal usage of that in a TV series called The Bridge, which was a remake. But The Bridge is this really interesting that takes place between the crossing between El Paso, Texas, and Mexico, and they find a body right on the middle of the bridge, but it's sewn together of a U.S. resident, a U.S. person, and a Mexican person.
Oh,
and basically it's the two police sides. You've got Damien
Lindelof?
No. The Spanish actor. He was in
Damien
Weeds.
or Damien?
I think it's his. I always get his name confused with the guy that played Lil Bitch.
Like Lost Frontrunner or it's
Damien Bick, who's he's in Hateful Eight. He was in Weeds. He played like the Mexican drug lord.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's him and the girl that played Helen of Troy. I'm gonna blank on her name right now too. But yeah, it's a really, really fucking great story. And Ted Levine, that's the one name I can remember.
Never heard of it.
But they basically turned it. It was based on a Swedish TV series that ran 1 year, but the show is very much half in Spanish, half in English, and you get to see how the police side. Yeah, but this is way before. This is FX, way before Narcos, like 2010 or 11, I think. But just a phenomenally well done series, and completely uses the idea of what the police department is like in Mexico versus U.S. right at that border where you've got the Texas guns. But if you're looking for a TV series on that, and the other one we have to talk about if we're going to talk about crossings is No Country for Old Men.
Britney Spears Crossroads.
I mentioned No Country a little bit earlier.
I mean, No Country has got some amazing stuff.
Stop for a second.
I'm not going to acknowledge your Crossroads joke. I'm sorry.
Literally Crossroads. It takes place in Texas. It stars Britney Spears.
That's somebody.
Does it take place in Texas for real, Nick?
Yes.
See you at the crossroads.
We got Zoe Saldana, Taryn Manning, Dan Aykroyd, Kim Cattrall,
Okay.
Justin Long
Doing
makes
some of
out
their-
with Britney Spears.
Everyone doing their best. Wait, how do you know that?
Because I've seen
There it is. There we have it. He's seen it. Ben Wilson has seen Crossroads.
I've actually never seen Crossroads. I read an interview one time with Justin Long where he talked about making out with Britney Spears.
There we go.
Just grabbed a beer, smacked his lips, and watched the one clip of Justin Long making out with Britney Spears.
I did assume you were making a joke, so I apologize. I take back, but we're not going to spend any more time on Crossroads. Other than you naming the cast, that's really all we need to know.
Did you know Cats actually took place in Dallas?
I thought those cats sounded familiar.
Yeah, they had a southern twang. Cats, it's a Texas movie.
I think that's Fats. Sorry, had to do it.
Oh lordy. So Ben, what's your kind of favorite not as well known Texas movie? Other than that time I came over to your house and you were watching Paris, Texas in like 2015, and I'm like, what are you doing? You're like, watching Paris, Texas, of course.
Well, Paris, Texas is one of my favorite movies, but Paris, Texas is a really well-known movie.
By some people.
Well, it was, only considered a classic.
By older people.
By older people, yeah.
Some people would consider it a film.
I would consider it.
That was a very Jiminy Glick. Some people would consider it a film.
Did we just wait?
I think we just did that in unison.
I think I might have to rewind a little bit. I would say the first time I remember watching a movie where Texas played a really crucial character, just kind of as an overall feeling, was The Last Picture Show, which is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I think it's 1972, 71, 73, somewhere right around there. Early 70s, but just a super fantastic cast. It's Jeff Bridges and
what's her name? She looked so amazing. Well, Bridges and Sybil Shepherd. And
yes.
And the guy who went crazy and played Uncle Eddie, Quaid, Randy Quaid.
Yeah, Randy Quaid, the older Quaid.
Even Randy Quaid looked good in that movie. That's how old it is. He looked really good.
Poor Randy Quaid he's waiting in the shallow end of the Quaid gene pool.
He used to be a
good looking dude.
Look up Last Picture Shows. First of all, Sybil
the
Shepherd is
Quaid
fucking amazing, gorgeous, but he's looked like a good looking young man.
Yeah,
Quaid in general, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
It was a movie where
There could only be one.
it seemed like the high school experience felt different because they were stuck in these kind of like dying towns in Texas, where people had moved and developed, and then all of a sudden, those 4 oil rigs that were operating dry up, and then they have to relocate, and now that town has no industry anymore. It felt like a real people dealing with a crisis of conscience at a young age for reasons other than just typical high school shit.
Yeah.
And like contemplating their future based off of like, can I get away from this place? And I think that's a precursor to kind of Dazed and Confused and a lot of the other movies that kind of deal with some of those themes in more humorous in other ways. But Last Picture Show would be one that I think is a quintessential Texas movie. And then the only thing I would say is I would go back to the Western thing. And I find it really ironic. Like The Searchers takes place in Texas, and The Searchers is probably, I think, the most famous Western of all time. I mean, it's got the most famous Western shot of all time. I think that's inarguable. The opening, closing shots of the Searchers is pretty classic. However, that same year, Giant came out. And I think Giant is a better movie than The Searchers. I think The Searchers is actually pretty overrated. But The Giant was James Dean and Liz Taylor. And I mean, just some fantastic performances and really evolving performances because the movie takes place over kind of a longer amount of time where it's this, these newlyweds basically move back to town and then have kind of their relationship and their relationship with their families tested over the course of time. But it's a Western. There's some really, really great kind of Texas Westerns that came out there in the 50s. There are a lot more than that, but sure. I just think it's interesting that those two movies both came out in 56. And I always thought Giant was a far superior film to The Searchers.
Well, and you've got to figure also what's kind of interesting about a lot of those Westerns that none of them were shot in Texas either. And that's kind of interesting to talk about. Not none of them, but the majority
Giant was shot in Texas.
Giant was shot in Texas because I know a lot of the old stuff was shot in New Mexico and California, out in those ranches, which can stand in for parts of Texas.
I'm not sure about The Searchers.
Yeah, I don't know.
Was Hanging at Picnic Rocks? No, that's...
It was expensive to go and shoot out in Texas that time. You got to move a whole fucking crew out. I mean, that's a long way to get out there, especially when you have to have a very compelling reason to kind of get into that locale.
James Dean just told Liz Taylor to get on his Harley, and they drove out there. I'm sure that was a magical trip.
That's do you think Dean and Liz got together?
I have no idea, but
that's a good what if short film. The ride out to Texas with James Dean
and 56.
That's kind of a fucking great.
Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar.
But that's the kind of shit. Like I would watch something like that. It's like just two people on a road trip, but it's these celebrities, and you get the fake real story out of it. It's kind of interesting.
It could be interesting.
So one of the ones that I had on my list, and I'm a really big fan of, that's not a hugely well known movie, is Happy Texas. And Happy
99.
Texas Yeah, and Happy Texas is interesting because it's not shot in Texas; it is shot in California.
It does have Steve Zahn.
It does have Steve Zahn, and
Isn't Jennifer Aniston in that?
No, it's Ileana Douglas and Steve Zahn, Jeremy Northam, and who's the other actress? It's not Aniston though. Not that I don't remember her being in.
No.
It was somebody else, but it's the premise is great. You've got these two crooks. They're on the run. They go out into hiding in this place called Happy Texas, which is hosting a children's beauty pageant because that was a very big thing during the late 90s of learning about these crazy fucking children's beauty pageants. So they pretend to be two gay beauty pageant runners and start coaching these girls for the thing as they're hiding out.
I
in the
remember
town.
it. I remember seeing it when it came out.
Yeah, and it's William H. Macy is the cop that's hunting them down, who winds up coming out in the course of the movie, which adds to the thing. Which is really great because they play up, obviously there's a lot of not very sensitive straight guys pretending to be gay things in our history as far as punchlines in movies, but I gotta say it's one of the few movies that turns that conceit a little bit with another character who becomes that's got a lot of pathos going into it. That's really good, but it's
kind of like the Mexican.
Yeah, exactly. Which, funny enough, my brother was actually just where they shot the Mexican, and we were talking about that movie for a long time on Saturday.
Interesting.
But yeah, Happy Texas it's a light but kind of dark comedy at points, but it's really, really fun. And I like that it takes that pageant scene that feels so very, very Texas and like it dives right into it.
Well, that one made me want to bring up one of the more recent movies I think that a lot of people kind of really correlate with Texas, which is Hell or High Water, which is a really, really well done movie because it uses Texas as a character really well, where they're moving from town to town to town. And so the personalities kind of vary with these small West Texas towns. And it really plays into kind of just the whole kind of pathos of the movie. And so great performances throughout. And of course, I'm a huge Ben Foster fan, and I do like Star-Lord. Oh
yeah.
So
not Star-Lord. Not
Chris
Pine.
Chris Pine, I mean.
Captain Kirk.
Other Chris.
What's funny is one
of the Chris's.
I watched this movie in Texas with a Texan who was trying to figure out all of the locations in it and being like, that looks like Brady, Texas, and that's that, and walking through all the ones, and I'm like, no, they shot the whole thing in New Mexico, and which they did, but it shows you how a lot of those things look. 'Cause he was positive. He's like, oh, I know what little town that is. And you bring up a good point. The reason why is the way they dress the set and the extras and the accents and the locations. They do a really good job of subtly moving you into these different areas of Texas. Even though they're shooting someplace else outside there, they really make it feel like it.
That's interesting that they shot the entire thing in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Because Texas is so clearly like a through line in that movie.
Yeah. And it looks, it fooled a guy who's lived in Texas his whole life, so they did a good job of it. Now, Nick, for you, I know we've already done the sound bite from it, but for me, my introduction to Texas in film was a little movie called Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Why don't you talk about your experience with that movie and the scene at the Alamo?
It's the same experience, Matt. Yeah, that's the first time you really you saw the 10-gallon hats and the Southern twang and the caricature, but also there's an actual scene at the actual Alamo. And it plays into the comedy so well because of the fish out of water thing. And I don't pretend to know where Pee-wee lives. I guess that's a whole other sort of Springfieldian debate.
I always assumed he lived in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that makes sense. That certainly makes sense.
Like a Beverly Hills, I figured, what's his name?
But he stopped at the dinosaurs in Palm Springs, and that means he would be traveling across through Texas on the East Coast.
Yeah, I don't
ended
know.
up at the dinosaurs in the desert, and he ended up in Hollywood at the end of the movie. So he was coming, maybe Florida.
Oh my God! Does Pee-wee live in Florida?
Maybe
Does he live in Tampa? Florida. Was he that guy that masturbated in that movie theater in St. Petersburg? Oh my God.
Pee-wee's from Tampa.
Pee-wee's,
That makes sense. That tracks.
Pee-wee's from St. Pete, Florida. We've unearthed it.
Wow.
So
he's got to water his tropical plants. It makes perfect sense when you think about it.
So this is kind of
anyway.
I kind of want to. I'm curious on your take on this and this is important. I think as we have these discussions about these locations that we tend to as viewers.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Is Anton Chigurh as scary in any other state in the U.S.?
New Jersey.
I mean.
He's got badass cred, but he's got that haircut in that setting. That just something about the fact that it's in Texas always made Anton Chigurh scarier to me.
He has the most he has the most nonsensical weapon of all time. And that weapon alone, plus that haircut, makes me afraid of him no matter where I see him.
100%.
Those two things together make me very uneasy.
Yeah, but he's in Texas where there's lots of cattle, and it wouldn't be as strange to find someone with a weird haircut walking down the street.
Not dressed like that guy. Like, he doesn't look... This isn't... Like, I don't see that guy walking down the side of the road. I'm like, oh, that farmer's lost his way. I'm like, nope. Drive faster. Get past this guy.
Just once, I would like you to agree with my hypothetical conversation. I finally get to talk about Texas.
I'm sorry, Nick's breaking up.
Hey,
let's.
Hey, Nick, call it. Call it.
No, we're not going to do that. So I have a question for you.
Right,
I have a question for you guys. I think we should do this kind of on each of our locations as well. But it is interesting when you think about us as film goers, and especially as children growing up watching movies. We have not traveled to a lot of these places. So our introduction to a lot of locations is through film and television. And, we talk about Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I've now since been to the Alamo. And the first time I went to the Alamo, I was very surprised that it was in the middle of a fucking city.
Right.
I only knew it from Pee-wee, and something about how they shot it and show it in Pee-wee, and then the occasional photographs I'd seen from history books. I'm like, no, this is someplace out in the middle of Podunk, Texas, out in a field somewhere. There's the Alamo left standing. And you go and you're like, no,
it's right on the Riverwalk. And
there's
the coolest cities in Texas.
There's a fucking Starbucks across the street. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that did you have any preconceived notions about Texas from movies that you watched or before you actually visited there?
By the way, Matt, I think there actually is a basement in the Alamo. Somebody told me that when I was there.
Oh, man.
I'm not falling for that one.
No, I'm not joking. I'm literally not. I think there actually is a basement in the Alamo.
Well, I'm not asking.
they dug it after Pee-wee.
First of all, the number of people asking that question.
Yeah, they just got so tired of saying no that they built the basement, just like the Stephen King Shining hotel built a maze.
I visited Texas at a pretty young age, and I was always relatively unimpressed by it. And I've actually found myself that I like
Texas. Go get some Neosporin. You're gonna need it for that burn.
Surprise!
No, but
I've seen better.
But I think that's because I was only I was only in Dallas, and I was only in Houston, and in the city, and I didn't really see anything. And then as I've gotten a little bit older, and I've gone back to visit more, I've found that I feel like a lot of the kind of Texasisms that are out there and some of the real, and you hate to call them stereotypes, but some of the culture that you see. When I drove to Shiner, Texas to do a shoot from Austin, that hour and a half drive, just going through these little towns, and I stopped at a couple places, and I went and ate, a steak at this one place, and it was I got 14 ounces of steak for $7, and it was just because I was oh yeah, we slaughtered that cow 3 days ago. It was a really interesting experience.
Now they have banh mi pizza.
It's grown on me. Well, that's Austin. And once you realize that every town has its own identity, I think that it's a more interesting place to visit, and you can kind of understand what to expect based off of where you're going.
Well, yeah, and we asked your wife what she thought about it, and she said
it was all right.
So, I mean, you can't please everyone. Some places are better than others.
Ryan, what do you have to say about your hometown? Oh, no, we'll just let you listen in anger, not being able to respond or
I
defend
did think that was kind of funny because we will likely have Ryan on a podcast in like a few weeks, and Ben's like, "Yeah, let's get that Texas episode out of the way right away."
Well,
we don't have anyone that's
do-
uniquely qualified to talk about that
We're
one.
not going to do a short form episode. And by the way,
I've seen
he's
better.
from
He doesn't
Bedford,
need to
Texas.
defend himself.
Bedford, Texas. Oh God, that's a place. It's a place. That's where Ryan's
Where
from.
the men are men and the cows are scared.
I'm going to bring up one quick movie that came out in, I believe, 96. Yeah, I think it was 96. Starring, I just want to throw out the cast here first. Frances McDormand, Joe Morton, Matthew McConaughey, Chris Christopherson, and Chris Cooper.
I know the movie you're talking about. John Sayles is Lone Star.
It's John
Yeah.
Sayles' Lone Star.
Fucking phenomenal movie.
Talk about a fucking underrated Texas movie. Lone Star is a hell of a movie, and I recommend anybody who has not heard or seen of that movie, go check it out. Very young Matthew McConaughey.
No, and I have to say, oddly enough, a couple of our listeners have watched that movie because we watched that in college when we were at UF. I know Casey's seen it if he remembers seeing it. I'm not sure if Helgi remembers, but yeah, that got me really into John Sayles. And I remember I famously recommended that my dad and I go see Sunshine State. It was directed by Sayles because it was also about land development in Florida, which my dad was in, and it was not about land. I mean, it was about land development in Florida, but it's a
but it
Sayles
wasn't
movie.
really about.
It was not a well received movie.
Well, he thought he was seeing Soupy Sales.
It would have been way happier with that, like 100%. If it had been Sergeant Bilko again, he would have been even happier. But yeah, Lone Star is a fucking great slow burn.
Mystery. Yeah.
I think it's one of the first times watching a movie because that was right when I was getting into like really kind of soaking up stuff. And it was the first time I watched a movie to really understand what a slow burn meant, as far as there's a difference between boring and something that's slowly taking you towards an inevitable conclusion.
Something that you're involved in, and you understand that you're involved in it because you can't wait to see what happens next. Yeah.
Like the New Way podcast. Submit your questions, comments, or answers to some of our trivia questions on our Facebook.
That was a good plug for our show in our show. we have to figure out how to get plugs into other shows that people are listening to. If you're listening to this, you found us.
You did it,
We're
fam.
right here.
Ben mentioned slow burn. I just had to take my opportunity where I saw it.
It's a slow ride. Take it easy. And on that note, that will tie up our On Location in Texas podcast episode. We hope you enjoyed this fleeting glimpse at what we have to talk about, and a little bit speedier than some of our normal stuff. And we will have several more of these. If you would like your city and or state featured in an upcoming episode of On Location In,
Google make sure at least 5 films have taken place there, and then
write your representative and urge them to pick up the New Way podcast, and maybe we'll feature you in an upcoming episode.
Otherwise, we're going to yield to Nick's decision to do Delaware.
Ooh. We're in Delaware. Well, I mean,
I already made the joke earlier.
I
That's why
would be
saying it.
interested in. I mean, it could be a whole episode on The Wire, but we could talk Baltimore and Maryland, and mostly The Wire
and John Waters
and Sack Lunch Punch, which takes place in New York, but oddly has a ton of Maryland references in it. So maybe next time. But thank you so much for listening to the New Way.
Will you humor me one last time?
I will.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
I love it.
And on that note, we'll talk to you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, wasn't even loud enough, Nick. Say it loud. All right.